Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Before I say anything else, hats off to both teams. Alabama, Georgia just easily put on what is probably going to be the game of the year in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, September 28th, 2024. What a game, what a matchup. You could just tell that this game had a big feeling about it. Obviously, it was two Titans, but it was deeper than that. Alabama had gotten the better of Georgia in years past under Nick Saban. This was a test. Can Kalen DeBoer pick up where Nick Saban left off, or is Kirby Smart going to establish himself and the Georgia Bulldogs as easily the best team in the SEC for years to come? And man, oh man, Kalen DeBoer answered. He and the Alabama Crimson Tide put on a phenomenal game, especially in the first half. Man, they looked unstoppable. We're going to go through it quarter by quarter, half by half. It was really a tale of two halves. The first half was really all Bama. The second half was mainly all Georgia, except for a few key plays that put Alabama ahead in the end. So yeah, number 4 Alabama, number 2 Georgia Bulldogs at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Let's talk about it. So like I said, this was just a big game feeling. With the new 12-team playoffs, it didn't necessarily have the implications of losers out, winners in of the playoffs, because I really think both of these teams are going to get in the playoffs regardless. One of them will probably end up being the SEC champion. If it's not Texas, it'll probably be one of these two teams, but it just had that big feel. Like Alabama, Georgia, it seems like have kind of ruled college football for the past several years, and it seemed like Georgia was starting to take that torch as the best team hands down in college football over Alabama. And then with Nick Saban retiring, that just kind of put the pressure on Alabama this season. They looked good, not so good in some of these first 3 games. But this was really the test. Is Alabama still Alabama without Nick Saban? And I think the answer is a resounding yes. Jalen Milroe, in my opinion, had a Heisman Trophy game. If he wins the Heisman Trophy, I think this is the game they're going to call back to. I think he threw for 374 yards and rushed for 117 yards with 2 rushing touchdowns and 2 passing touchdowns, I believe. Phenomenal stat line. He put on a clinic all game long. He started to slow down a little bit in the second half. You can tell that Milroe is just way more comfortable with that fast-paced offensive style. All guns blazing like they were in the first half. Ended up putting up a total of 28 points with the defense helping with the extra 2 with the safety. Milroe was unstoppable. That offense was unstoppable in the first half, which was a shock. I think Georgia's defense has been highly praised for such a long time, but Alabama's offense in the first half really was just doing whatever they wanted to. Deep balls, running down the field, a lot of just check downs that were just wide open, getting easy first downs constantly. And Alabama, especially in that first quarter, ended up putting up 21 points. Just an absolute clinic on offense. But credit where credit is due. As much as I'm an Alabama fan, Georgia really fought their way back in the second half. Alabama, especially on the defensive side, started to slack off a little bit. Georgia's defense started to put a lot more pressure on Alabama, and with them slowing the pace down a little bit, really not as focused on putting the points up as quickly as they were in the first half, maybe just slowing it down, draining some of that clock. You can tell that Georgia's defense started to settle in, get more comfortable, and figure out the rhythm of Jalen Milroe a lot more. And yeah, credit to Carson Beck, man. He looked like he had seen a ghost in the first half, but really started turning it up in the second half. I believe he finished with over 400 passing yards, which for what he did in the first half, I don't even know if he broke 100 passing yards in the first half. Maybe he did, but if he did, it was barely. And throwing for 2 interceptions, man, it looked like he had seen a ghost, and I did not expect him to recover the way he did. But he did. He showed how great of a quarterback he is, even though he had some bad throws, some bad interceptions. At heart, Carson Beck is still a phenomenal quarterback. I just think that the hill that they had to climb in the second half was just a little too much. And it just goes to show how good Georgia is. They literally took the lead back, going up 34-33, I believe, in the fourth quarter. And that just shows they were right there in that game in the fourth quarter. And if they had not dug themselves a hole so much in the first half and were able to build that lead a little bit more in the fourth quarter, we could have been looking at a Georgia win. It just did not go that way. They started way too slow on offense, let Jalen Milroe and crew score way too many points on them, which is on them. It really tested this Alabama defense. They were starting to get torn apart a little bit in the second half, but yeah, that last drive after, first of all, a phenomenal play by Ryan Williams. I think it was a 75-yard touchdown. Amazing catch, amazing way to juke around the defenders. Just an amazing touchdown play in general. And then the 2-point conversion, which was very, very clutch at the end, putting Alabama up by 7 really putting the pressure on Georgia there at the end, and that tested that young Alabama defense. This defense is very, very young and new, and they were put to the test on that last drive against Georgia. And while Georgia did their thing for a little bit, number 2, Xavier Brown, I believe is his name, ended up coming away with a huge interception, putting the Tide ahead, cementing the Tide's win, and yeah, closing the show here at Bryant-Denny Stadium. To me, this was a legacy game for Kalen DeBoer, and just such a big game for Alabama football in general. They kept saying it on the broadcast, as many times as these teams have played, even for national championships, there was something about this game, and I believe at heart, it's that factor of Nick Saban was no longer the head coach. Is Alabama still that team? And they answered, with the whole world watching, with the 45th president, soon to be 47th president of the United States, Donald Trump there. All eyes of the nation on this game. Alabama answered. Even though they slacked off a little bit in the second half, they answered. It was a resounding yes that Alabama football is not going anywhere. They're here to stay. And although Nick Saban, in my opinion, is the greatest head coach of all time, Alabama football is still Alabama football. Like Kalen DeBoer said, Alabama football is the standard. So yeah, that's just my initial reaction, just now filming this like an hour after the game. I'm still in shock. Man, just as a fan of sports, as a fan of football, I love a game like that. Like, as much as I would have loved to have seen as an Alabama fan us get rid of them and dispose of them, the sports fan and the football fan in me loved that game. I loved how quick Bama started. I loved the effort that Georgia put forward in the second half. And I loved that clutch time of Carson Beck throwing that late touchdown to go ahead. Jalen Milroe and Ryan Williams pulling an amazing play out and going ahead again. And then that late defensive stop by Alabama. It was cinema. This game was just phenomenal. And that's all I've got, folks. I'm going to try to get on a little bit better of a filming schedule. I know, I apologize. I want to try and get back, but I had to film something about this game. Phenomenal game. Well done, Alabama. Well done, Georgia. We will see both of them in the playoffs, and I cannot wait.